So, all right. Thank you very much for coming, and please welcome with me the original founders of the Unite Sustainable Mobility Forum. And today we would like to dive into a panel discussion about the European transport systems. So I think they don't need any introduction. You've all seen them. You know their specialties. You know their talks from the previous semester. And in preparation for the panel, I have sent them 3 questions and ask them to respond in 2 or 3 minutes. But I'm really hoping it's going to become a discussion like we just had in the hallway, where I said I wish I had a camera, and let everyone have a glimpse of what we think is going on within Europe. But officially, here they are. And my first question would be, how close do you think we are in achieving a sustainable European transport system? So I'd like to go this way.
Okay. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for this, I suppose, useful discussion. First of all, I repeat the concept that I explained during one seminar, that is, how can we measure sustainability? And from my point of view, it deals mainly with the use of space, the use of energy, and which kind of energy, the impact on the environment at local and global level, and then the effects on accidents, deaths, so safety. And so trying to answer to this question, the network at European level has to be organized following these elements. And this means that, in my point of view, we need to address a hierarchical transport network where the main backbone, as far as possible, is railways. These are represented by railways because they use less space, less energy. As a matter of fact, there are cableways which use less more when compared to the unit of mass. They don't have a local impact, low. Global impact can be differentiated in terms of energy, and they typically rely on the electric grid. And then in terms of accident, the rate of accidents in railways is from 50 to 100 times less when compared to traffic, to road transport. So the backbone is made by railways as far as possible. Then you arrive to the nodes of the network, where you have any transport system according to the local needs. So a metro system or a local railway. Then you arrive to the node. You can continue by car, by bicycle. You can even use the car for going from any origin to destination. It depends on how this is connected. So concluding, from my point of view, having these elements for quantifying, we need to address this hierarchical network, and we arrive to connect each node respecting those elements. I think we are going in a good direction because the European Union has chosen in the 90s Trans-European Railway Network as a backbone.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Answering the question, my belief is that depends on region of Europe that we are talking about. And just talking about my region, Southwest Europe, Portugal, just to give an example, what could be different. For instance, we have in my country huge acceptance for the digital governance. Also in transport, we have tolls in the motorways from 35 years ago without stopping to collect the toll. So we can do things in our ATMs that is almost everything, paying taxes, buying license, whatever. So it's a huge acceptance for this digital move of healing of governments. But we and I believe that all Europe also have a problem, and for sure we have a problem of this type in our country. Are we ready to lose privacy, to confront some human rights? because to be efficient in doing sustainability for transport, the key issue is knowing where people are, inside and outside the vehicles, mainly in urban areas. So just to think in that. The other thing that we can learn from our country, which is a less economical, healthy country for the people. In general, this implies less capacity to impose, the governments to impose a different paradigm in the energy available to fulfill all the needs of transportation, you know, and that is an issue when we look to sustainability, to looking for sustainability. And finally, another thing that is a problem in my country is the flexibility of governance for business models, for dealing with some loss of privacy, for these issues that are prevent a better development of sustainability of the transportation system offer in my country. Just to refer three aspects that you can feel as Portuguese and is not replicable probably directly to all the regions in Europe, but it's an issue for us. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, when you're asked these very generic questions, I recall many years ago, I attended was a symposium with 5 Nobel Prizes, 5, in physics and chemistry, but they were talking about sustainability. Well, I'm talking about 20 years ago. None of them was expert about sustainability, but they were smart. No? But we all left a little bit like, they said generic things. No? And this is a little bit the feeling that I am having. I'm talking about myself, no? When about these questions. First, well, I would say as a summary, but then I'll give you some more details, that we are going in the right direction, but maybe too slow. But too slow in compared to what? Eh? So it's okay to put a carrot in front of the donkey, and then maybe the donkey moves. Maybe if the donkey sees the carrot, and if the donkey is hungry, this is okay to set some goals that we know that they are not feasible, okay? But it's okay. It's like, I want to be this. No? Well, what is true is that in the last decades, 2-3 decades, I remember when I started hearing this sustainable word applied to mobility. At the beginning, it looked like a contradiction, because mobility, if mobility means freedom, means economic development, whatever, and then sustainability was trying to reduce this. And actually, the only sustainable mode is walking. Walking. Even bicycles are, you know, we need to produce the bicycles, but now today is a need. This was maybe 3 decades ago. It looked like a contradiction. Today is a need, but we need to define how deep is this need. Because sometimes we don't talk about the purpose of the mobility. So we can talk about the social cost per passenger kilometer, the unit of mobility, social cost of passenger, social including energy and environmental assets, but multiplied by the probability that this movement is really needed. And we never talk about this. No? It's like we need to this many people want to move. Well, why? If we start asking these questions, maybe we have to reduce tourist mobility. Why? Just look at the picture or a video and think like that. And also, I think mobility is part of a package of many things. One of them is energy. Bruno said, environmental, or let's say society's assets we have. One of them is the space, energy, many other things, but also how we move. We're moving with some vehicles. The vehicles use type of or another type of energy. They may have some efficiency or another. We have a level of occupancy of the vehicles. If we change this, we can make the things more efficient. The infrastructure supply, the model share, even recently the telework. Recently, because I remember there was they made a kind of a think tank in 1994. Was a Benjamin report. Well, Benjamin's report was telecommunication engineers. They thought that physical mobility was going to be like telecommunication engineering. So everything is going to be duplicating every 2 years, whatever, really fast. And they made a kind of forecasting for the year 2000. And they were saying, I don't know how many millions teleworks for the year 2000. And well, many things related to mobility that were completely absurd in 1994 and even today, 30-something years later. Well, after this introduction, I did my homework with the help of technology. So I asked ChatGPT.
Some questions.
Okay, give me a score of how we are. And of course, we have to distinguish between urban mobility and then interurban and long distance. Interurban, let's say more kind of metropolitan, and interurban. And then here, this is the rank. The best thing, number one, urban mobility. Strong. We are moving strong in sustainability of urban mobility. The second one, rail. Why? Because the energy, whatever. Number three is road passenger, but it's not green. It's already yellow already. The fourth one, maritime transportation. The fifth, road freight. We have been seeing some projects that you guys are developing here in this direction to make this road freight more sustainable. And the worst, aviation. Number six, aviation. Anything that has to deal with very long distances, and that usually is usually still oil, and it doesn't have a substitute of sort of energy that gives you this long range, so that you can overcome these long distances. So we are doing well in the right direction, but a little bit, the pace is maybe too slow. But what does this mean, slow or fast? I mean, what's the point? There are some economic issues, many of the industries or people that are retarding and delaying this implementation, fast implementations. My last anecdote is that politicians, whoever make these kind of goals, decarbonization, whatever, vision zero, this kind of absolute goals, they are politicians, and they try to talk to people that they are not experts. No, so maybe they are doing their job well, but when we are experts, then we always say. I remember in Barcelona, they have this urban mobility plan. Every 4 years, it always has the same goal to reduce traffic 21%. It's always the same number, 21% every 4 years. And I remember some years ago, but not too many, I invited the politician, the number 2 of the, after the mayor, to give a seminar. I told my students, let's see if she says this goal, because the mobility is increasing. It's not reducing, it's traffic, and traffic mobility is increasing. Let's say what she says. No, she said that, because it was written, it's a goal, it's a nice goal, and we want to reduce traffic minus 21%. And well, it's increasing. So how do you explain that? No, they don't care. And they don't care because they are not going to be here in the next elections, probably. No, so it's something politically correct. So what I mean is that some of these goals are okay to put this carrot, but sometimes if the carrot is too far away, the donkey doesn't move. That's it.
Yeah.
I can talk more, but
yeah. Yeah, no, great. ChatGPT has sort of given us the answer. To sum up, I think the short answer, we are not very close to having a sustainable transport system, from my perspective. I think it's dividing it up into the urban perspective and the long distance travel transport perspective is useful. Most of the people live in the cities, and that's the environment they experience and move around in most of the time. But in the long distance transports and movements, and some people that were responsible for a lot of the emissions, CO2 emissions, and etc. So a lot of the challenges lie there, especially on the environmental side of the sustainability concept. Then we have the other side, which also the social aspects of sustainability, which I think are more relevant maybe in the urban context where people live and move around. And I think there are quite different things that need to happen in the urban setting and the long distance transport setting. Long distance has to do with which fuels we run on, vehicle technologies and things like that. At the local scale, it's more about maybe planning the urban structures. The cities, local governments have a more important role to play there, and public transport, which is my main area, is more relevant in the urban setting. I think at least my feeling is that more is going on at the local level than maybe at the national level, at least things that you can see happening from one day to another. Locally, there can be more initiatives to support walking, biking, public transport, etc., which definitely is going on in many cities, although not in all cities. So again, it's a mixed picture.
All right, thank you. So I'll take a little bit of an opportunity to respond. So I think I start with Francesc, because when you brought up the donkey, I was like, just take a whip and it moves, right? Mm-hmm. So, but then at the same time, you also said, well, the politicians have these 4 years. No one wants to actually grab and say, we have to go that way, because we also agree you have to walk. That's the most sustainable way to keep you healthy, to really be active on your own with your own forces, to be able to sustainable, but also in the long term, not just mobility wise, but for your personal mobility. And so that came to mind. And then I thought about what ChatGPT said. I'm just glad ChatGPT doesn't have us, but these students still do. Because I have to a little bit disagree, because I don't think in the urban realm, we are necessarily being better with sustainability. We are erasing the mistakes we made of allowing cars to take up so much of our space in cities. Granted, Europe is very good compared to many, many other countries, but we still have allowed it too far. And now we grant tiny steps, like micro-mobility steps of scooters or electric bicycles. They are steps in the right direction, but they are really not where we should be heading. And then I think of Bruno's argument of saying, okay, let's take the train network. Our main constraint here is time, right? When I think about where you came from, if you had taken the train, well, if we would invest like Japan in high-speed trains, that might be a way to move forward to really make that network as efficient as we could have. So I think there's many, many ways where we need to look at Europe in a way, also internationally, what can we import? But we have greater city centers than I think any other country in the world. So no offense to anyone who's listening, but I think Europe has amazing cities. It has the amazing space to create that sustainable network of walking and biking. And then going back to Luís, it's really, we don't have data as transport professors because of the high privacy issues. So we really can't put our fingers on what exactly we need to do or how do we incentivize. And that's where we sit. We are, without human interaction, we can provide transport systems, but it's the balance of striking and encouraging what is the right thing to do, right? And so I start with Luís, because you had said data privacy is one concern. So where do you see a challenge of moving us into a more European-wide transportation system?
Let's start by what can we do at the European level? In some extent, it was already done with the European Green Deal and some enforcement in some local policies that should be attained in a certain period of time. That, for instance, for us is important. Have that milestones to be reached. The other work, I don't know, and I feel that is not at the European level, but at the regions level. We need to adapt to the situation that we can figure out in each region of Europe. We have the good directions, but we need to put on the terrain all the measures that carry on and carry ourselves to the right direction. And let me say, just underline that winning hearts and horses and minds for this cause is very, very difficult. That is my experience, And so everyone, each one of us, should do their work and forward. Just to underline that we are on the front way of this, let's say, path that we would like to achieve, because we are involved in several developments that will help in the future, of course. We need to do our job in our family, in our friends, in our networks, in order to catch up the right attitude to make some, let's say, moves, some transfers from less sustainable way of moving to a better sustainable way of moving. So you asked me that what should we, just to wrap up, what should we do at European level? learn with each other. Because probably in each of the regions, we have different situations that we can spot. And probably we can use solutions that in general, and normally we do not use in our region, but that were experimented in another region that had similar conditions. So we already have in Europe the right direction, the definition of the milestones. We need to learn with each other. I believe that is the next strong step. Learn with each other in order to achieve that sustainability goals for all kind of transportation, not only in urban areas, but also all the long transportation, the air transportation, all these kind of that we will need for sure in the next 10 to 20 years. Thank you.
So you asked what are the challenges? The challenges are to be coupled with the drivers following the concept of sustainability. Well, I make one step back. If you take any book on transport systems in your library of the 70s, 80s, 90s, a thing that I told, but I repeat it. You will search in the first pages, you will find any transport system is made by three things: the traveler, the infrastructure, and the vehicle. Okay? And the energy was given for granted, crude oil, mainly crude oil. Now this is put into discussion, as we know. So these three elements, one challenge is to make them become four. They've already become four. The fourth one is energy. Okay? So the first challenge is, do we have experts in energy within the transport domain, in powertrains, in fuels, in energy carriers, so on and so on? Maybe a bit weak. First challenge, if in the transport domain we don't have the competencies, we lose, and that sustainable network I was speaking about will not count. Second element, second challenge, of which we heard before. Nowadays, we have both transport, which is emotion-full communication, and motionless communication that we had not 20 years ago. We can decide not to move. If a transport system will not be so sustainable as our society will expect, they will lose. And we will go towards a sedentary society. We just order things online, we just take a video call, and we stay sat down all day long. Of course, I'm exaggerating. Because the transport system will not be competitive. There will be not that added value for meeting in person. Vice versa, if they can win the actual challenge of being sustainable, as we said before, then we can decide in the future, let's move, let's meet, because this gives an added value. So the first challenge is having the competence. The second one is to be actually sustainable. And this arrives to the third and last one. To have a competitive transport system, we need, and I'm quite sure of that, industry. Because Europe is made of competencies, and remember, knowledge is power. And within power, there is the power to do, the capability to build something, to make it run, to make it work, to maintain it. If we decide with the wrong choices to move the production elsewhere, I don't tell where, but you can understand, if we decide that, then we will not have the production of trains, of metros, of cableways, of new modern motor vehicles, of bikes, because we will lose that. And so we will lose our power. I'm exaggerating a bit, but it's not so far from the actual reality. So the third is the most important challenge for having a sustainable transport system is to maintain industry here in Europe and make trains, also airplanes, but we have to discuss a bit more about that, cars with a different role in the future, bicycle, motorcycle, that we all produce in Europe in the new concept. And we can enter into more detail, which is the new concept, but anyway, we have the ways to arrive there. And in that case, we can maintain knowledge and power. Within knowledge, I repeat, the capability to make things. Otherwise, we will be seller of something made by someone else, unfortunately. So these are the challenges in my point of view.
Thank you. Angela?
Yeah. Before I made my comments, Bruno, why don't you throw the students, the comments you made? I remember two, very interesting to me, because I didn't know about them. One, what's the emissions of producing an electric car in China that we buy here very cheap? And second, the implications of having electric trucks, the weight of the batteries.
I answer soon. Sure. Okay. Thank you. Yes, it's a very interesting question. Well, I start from a decision of the European Parliament that you most probably know in February 2023 of looking at the CO2 emissions at the tailpipe at the vehicle. This is fine if we look at internal combustion engine in a comparable way. But if we insert electric vehicles, and of course the electric vehicles do not have the tailpipe, so it's like making the problem of CO2, which is global, a problem of somebody else. Then I answer to your first question, Francesc. We need to look at the entire energy chain, of course, but not only the energy chain, but the life cycle. These are the two main elements. Because if I produce in China, sorry if I mentioned China, if I produce in China a vehicle, a motor vehicle, which arrives here in Europe at 6,000 euros, well, I buy it 6,000 euros. Interesting weight. If the goal is CO2, I have to look at its life cycle. And if in China, and it's like that, the C, the carbon, is in the percentage of production of electricity, the 63%. That means the CO2 has been emitted there. Then I have to transport these vehicles to Europe, and it takes 11,000 kilometers by naphtha. You know that it's one of the heaviest products of crude oil, so it produces a lot of CO2. So if I look at the life cycle, that vehicle is not winning at all, notwithstanding it's electric. And I arrive in Europe and I start with the operation. If it has been produced elsewhere, there is this life cycle. If it has been produced in Europe, we will have much less impact of the energy in terms of CO2 emissions during the production phase and the transport phase. We'll look at the operation. Well, at the operation, we have to look at the well-to-will, because again, we don't have to care about the local emissions of CO2, but how that electricity has been produced. Of course, we are looking at the renewables, but it's theoretical to think that the renewables will cover the transport demand, because transport demand in Europe is around 1/3 of the overall production. And 1/3, within that 1/3, road transport has the role of 86, 87, 90, even more %. So this means that all the energy absorbed by road transport has to be converted into renewables. In a country like mine in Italy, the renewables in the overall energy production are 19%. In the electricity production is 39%. But we have to look at the 19% because we have to add to 19% the 87 or 90% of 33, which makes 29. So 19 plus 29. And this 29 has to be all renewable, theoretical. but theoretical for decades, not for years. And so the first question was that, and the second was
The truck's electric.
yes, okay. When we look at the alternative, because it's an alternative, full electric vehicle or battery electric vehicle, we have two main elements: the electric motor and the battery. The weak element is not the electric motor. The efficiency is high, it doesn't produce local pollutants. The weak element is the battery. Okay, we are at a university, we look at research, we can expect a revolution in batteries, but it's 30 years that we work on batteries, even more. And even batteries at the solid state will not change, according to actual knowledge, the energy density. Nowadays, we are around 200, 250, a bit more watt-hour per kilogram. But an oil-derived fuel has 60 times, 90 times more in terms of energy density. So a battery in a heavy-duty truck implies, for having a certain autonomy with a mass of 40 up to 44 tons, has a mass of some tons, 5 tons, 6 tons, 7 tons. And this reduces the payload for the driver, which cannot load further goods, because part of the good for the weight is the battery. So somebody has said, unfortunately, well, let's increase the mass. Since most of you are civil engineers, we remake all the lateral barriers, we verify the structures, then we can speak about that. And this is what is happening at the European Parliament, unfortunately. So reducing the mass and the role of the battery is a good thing, in my point of view, because it has less impact in the production and in the recharging and in the cost of recharging. So charging while driving is a good option. I don't believe in big batteries, which have to be recharged with high power, which has an impact on the grid, on the cost, and anyway, it doesn't solve the problem of the mass. So for the time being, it's my answer.
Very good, very good. Okay, I back up what Luís was saying, that since we don't have whole rules in Europe, we don't know. Europe is not ruled like a country, it's just an association of countries. It's a really nice idea, but very complex, very complicated, and probably very costly. But it's like this, I'm used to this. Same in Spain, I live in Catalonia, and different languages, different things, everything is more complex, but well, it's like, it's what we have, no? China has a different position. China, it's one country, it's everything is planned. So the power they have for implementation as a whole country is much larger than we have in Europe. But we have to learn from the best cases. I think we should interact more. Well, best cases of each country. We're good on this, like A, B, C, and then we have to learn about D, E, F, and this can be taken from this other country, from this other country. The regulations are good as long as they are feasible. Okay? One thing is the carrot, is the goal. The goal is there, the sun. I want to reach the sun. You're not going to reach the sun. Yeah, the sun is okay. It's a goal to have it there, illuminating. And what the challenge is that we're going to meet. Decarbonization. Well, ChatGPT was saying in progress. So growth, the European vehicle growth is strong, but freight and aviation, they are behind. Multimodal integration. And I always wondered about this, because it's kind of a political objective. Why? I mean, I want to go from one point to another point in the most convenient way to me. to me. Can be in time, in money, in comfort. It depends on my goals. If my objective, sometimes my objective is not reaching fast. In general, yes. But sometimes, no, I want to get distracted. And maybe I want to take a bus or a route that is not the fastest one. It's not a motorway. It's more bucolic and, more nicer trip. So it depends on the objectives. A multimodal, yeah, it's a hierarchy of networks. It's convenient, but it's not always. We don't need to use it as an objective. It's not a goal. The goal is moving from origin to destination in a convenient way. Technology adoption, they say also. Well, to me, this is not a goal in transportation either. It's a mean. It helps. It improves the system, but it's not a goal. Why? I remember we had during decades a way of regulating the urban freight distribution in Barcelona with no technology, but was a regulation. It was smart, so it's a smart, but not related to technology. The goal was that the urban freight distribution, they use the spots for loading and unloading only for loading and unloading, not to spend as a parking spot all day long. Of course, if you are a real freight operator, you will use it properly because you get paid by the delivery. So you don't want to park and forget about it because you don't make any money. But who was doing that? The shop owners that they had a special license in their vehicles for freight distribution too. So they were parking, they were working, and they were parking. It's not loading and unloading, it's parking. So they just put two circles of cardboard. The exterior one you could turn, and they were defining a circular sector of half an hour. And with some people was very manual. Now everything is with apps, whatever, no? But during 3 decades, maybe we had this. What was okay was half an hour. Why? In case you had breakfast. Because usually you take less than half an hour. You take 5 minutes to deliver something or less. No? So there were some people looking at these circles. What time is it? Now it's 9:30. So if the circle says that you arrived before 9, and now it's you should be out, you get a ticket. If you arrived after 9 and you can still allow in this first half an hour, then you're okay. So the technology, it helps, but it's not an objective by itself to me in transportation. And we are really weak, and ChatGPT says that we are strong, so the other way around in governance. I don't know why they say this. Probably they get this from the policy books, no? European Union frameworks are ambitious and clear. So that's it. So we just write it, and we don't care about implementation. So besides these things, we talked about the decarbonization with all it's going to go slow. Infrastructure adoption, we need a lot of money. Cross-border integrations. Urban congestion and air pollution in all the large cities. Behavioral change, which is very difficult. I don't know if you guys, there is a picture very old, older than 2017, from UC Davis, that they were talking about the 3 revolutions in the future urban mobility, the 3 revolutions. One was electrification of vehicles. The other one was autonomous vehicles. And the third one was sharing the vehicles. And they put a kind of a traffic light, red amber and green. Red is the status quo, the current situation with no electrification, something that I don't know when they did this, maybe in 2015, 10 years ago. No electrification, no autonomous vehicles, and no sharing. Red. So the evolution was pretty bad. And all over the world, to 2050, well, I don't know how many million tons of emissions, I don't know how many billions cars. They put, the next step was electrification plus autonomous vehicles, but it was not green yet, it was amber. So the number of vehicles would reduce, the number of emissions will reduce a lot, but not zero, because what Bruno said. And then in order to get the traffic light green, we need also, besides that, we need sharing. So increasing the occupancy of the base. And then I always tell my students, well, if this is the real, the key instrument, why don't we do it right now? We don't need electric vehicles. We don't need autonomous vehicles. Why? Because it's very difficult. It's very difficult. So all these things that they sound like poetry or like music, it's very difficult in real practice. Digital and smart mobility and social equity, of course, and policy and governance, I'm sorry. I talked a little bit about this.
Okay, thank you. Erik, how about the two of us take the last one? Because I'm having the clock in mind. So the last one would be, given what our three colleagues just said, what is the most urgent action we should take now to move towards a sustainable European transport system?
Well, one thing that comes to my mind is the need for consistent policy over time. Not some things that change depending on who is currently governing at the EU level, but also at the national level, regional, local level, and so on. I know that the vehicle industry, for example, has really called for that they need to know what the rules of the game are if they want to know to go for electric trucks or hybrid trucks or biodiesel trucks or whatever. There are huge investments and huge long-term decisions for them. So we have Scania in Sweden, for example, which have called for the government to have clear priorities in this area, and Sweden is a good example where priorities have shifted over time, depending on which majority is currently ruling. Then we also have conflicts between the local level, who might have one kind of majority, in the national level, who has another, which is very evident in Stockholm. Like just this week, for example, there were negotiations that stranded between the city and region versus the national government. The region wants to build a subway, expand the subway network, good for sustainability, but there were some cost overruns. So now they need to discuss with the national level how to fund that. And the national government says, well, we want you to build this motorway ring road if we're going to add more money to the subway project. Probably this motorway ring road is not the ideal way to go if you want to achieve sustainable transport system. It will encourage car use. Maybe I'm not addressing your question directly in that way.
I think it's perfect. I think we see it in all our European countries, right? Like one area is absolute consistency in policy making, so it cannot shift between just because another party rules. And I think what I would add is also the knowledge base. For me, but for example, Bruno said, with a long lifetime of a vehicle, of the holistic view on what we're actually measuring. It can't be one day stationary charging is the best, the next day hydrogen is the best. It has to be over a lifespan, it has to be assessed, and always in comparison to what. It is expensive, yes, but in comparison to what? it has low CO2 emissions, yes, maybe locally, not globally. So I think that whole value chain has to be integrated. And if we get both in one boat, the knowledge and the consistency, I think then we can get towards a European transport system that is sustainable. Okay, so I will conclude now for us as speakers. I think we still have 10 minutes or so in case there's questions from the audience that you would like to address to one of us or all of us. Please feel free either online or, of course, in the room.
We talked about long distance transport, and you talked a lot about vehicles and decarbonizing vehicles. But I'm missing the part of reducing the need for long distance transport. What do you have to say about that?
But reducing what?
The need for long distance transport.
Long distance and short distance. There's the e-commerce. I don't use it very much, but I have to agree that it's convenient. But during some Christmas, I bought 5 or 6 things that from the same web, but the suppliers were different. So I got 4 times small packages and twice because I was not there for something that maybe I spent less than €100, 4 or 5 times, because they came twice. So this is short distance, but it's convenient to me. I didn't pay almost anything. Maybe paid few euros for the whole, maybe 4 or 5 euros per €100. So it's small quantity. It's convenient. Or these companies that they are closing. I don't know if here it's the same, but they boomed in. They boosted in during the pandemics. These deliveries of 10 minutes, ultra fast. They call it ultra fast delivery in 10 minutes. You were getting something. I mean, no, you cannot get the whole week market stuff. But a few things like chips, beers, whatever. And in 10 minutes, you have it. You were paying maybe €4 for the delivery. But, is this a need? Why 10 minutes? I mean, I don't understand. Because, okay, well, I don't have beers. Well, it's okay, but then wait half an hour, or go down to the supermarket. And so I don't know about the long distance. Maybe Bruno.
Provide you an economical answer, not technical. Which is the industry of industries in Europe? It's that of transport system and related vehicles. So the great part of the economy in Europe is that. If we reduce mobility and logistics, we reduce economics. So we have to keep this into account. One thing that is important is that differently from the past, when we compare alternatives, we use the travel time. But now, having a disposal of these devices, we have to compare the useful time that we can have during our travel. So in this case, train again is winning because I can use my time while traveling, better than other alternatives. The motor car is trying to do that by becoming autonomous, giving back the time to the driver. But some time will pass, we will see. So your question is correct, but we have to keep into account what finance and economics say. So we have to maintain our industry. Otherwise, we, as I said before, we will become seller of something. We will be, say, slaves of somebody else.
But we always try to make transport and mobility more efficient. But as we said, making it more efficient also makes that we consume it more. So at the end, is it really more sustainable?
It depends on what we consume. Space, energy, air, pollution, local and global, and lives, because sometimes they create that. It depends on what. Now, I don't want to enter into more detail. Maybe we can exchange an email, but it's a good question.
But I'd like to add one more thing. We are also now living in a global society that's very dependent. So we cannot be, as countries, even self-sufficient for our own population. We have to have long distance travel to feed Germany, for example, at certain time. And this is also in other countries the case where we are depending on others, not necessarily for the basic needs, but for example, in the US, the things that low-income households can order now from China is way cheaper than what they could buy in the US, like being it shoes, clothes, all of these things. They cannot afford the local prices. So I think reducing the need is having a self-sufficiency in the country, self-dependency, and paying the wages so you can actually afford the country you're living in. So I think that's what I would add to the discussion as well.
We're mostly talking about the urban areas, but especially in Germany, the rural areas have been left behind in terms of transport infrastructure. So owning a car is a necessity, basically. Do you have similar problems in your countries? And how can the disparity between the two areas can be limited?
Yes, I can start. Of course, we have that kind of problems. When I underline that it's very difficult to win the minds and the bosses of people, is because of that. How do you deal with some guys living in a low density area that needs their own car and their own combustion engine car to move every day, to do agriculture, to do whatever they have to do in that regions? How do you address that? There is only one solution. We need to look to that part of our people, of our, let's say, fellow countries, people, and try to solve the problem in the best way possible. For instance, with e-fuels, and Bruno said that in a conversation in the morning. For instance, with some small electric engine that helps the combustion engine to reduce substantially the emissions. These kind of solutions could not be overseen, as not sustainable, should be implemented. And we are talking about Europe and about India and about China, most part of the Asian countries, of Africa, of South America. What about that? We live, I believe, in the same planet, So there are steps, very sharp steps that we have to have in mind, not only for us in Europe, a developed region, but for the world. And so the things should go to that. Let me just underline, without losing our capacity to be competitive. Like Bruno said, sustainability and competitiveness are two faces of the same coin, and we need to relate both in Europe to sustain the European industry for our own sake, for our own consumer, but also to support other parts of the planet. I believe that is a good question.
Okay, thank you. So I think I would like to close it here. I think that was the perfect ending of the forum. So I thank especially our guests for coming here. Thank you to the students and the listeners, and have a good afternoon and weekend.